Metro Talk. I'm Kent Shuffle. Thanks for being with us. Jim Schrader, the publisher of the Telegraph, is alongside. Welcome, Jim.
Hi, Kent.
And Pat Gowan, one of the editors with the Post-Dispatch, is here as well. Welcome, Pat.
Hi, Kent.
Pat, the Army Corps of Engineers has put a hole, an intentional hole, in one of the levees near Cairo, Illinois, in an effort to relieve flooding. They're trying to save the town of Cairo. Was the Corps correct in flooding farmland in an effort to save the community?
They sacrificed about 133,000 acres and about 100 homes to save a town of about 2,800 people on the Illinois side. This created some state rivalry because, of course, the flooding they caused is in Missouri, and the place they saved is in Illinois. And Missouri had tried to go to the U.S. Supreme Court to get a ruling to stop the Army Corps of Engineers from blasting the levee. Now it's too late. That deed is done. When I first heard about the problem, I thought to myself, the levee's weak in Cairo. It may break and flood, the Ohio River being so high. As far as I know, the levee's okay on the Missouri side. I don't think it was in much jeopardy of breaching that I ever heard. Struck me that we ought to just let nature take its course, and whatever happens, happens. That would be the fairest. Why should man intervene? And then I got to thinking about that, and I thought, well, the problem with that is we took away nature's course a long time ago. When we built the levees in the first place, man was audacious enough to attempt to control nature. Nature had a system that had worked fine for some eons, but suddenly man didn't find it convenient enough. So I guess once we built the levees in the first place, then it's no longer a question of nature taking its course. It's a question of whether man ought to do something more to control for the greater good, and more people would have been affected by the flooding of Cairo, which is a terribly impoverished city. In the 2010 census, Cairo had the most children living in poverty of any school district in the state of Illinois. 60% of its kids were in poverty. I feel sorry for the people who lost their homes. I feel sorry for people whose farmland may be damaged in Missouri, though I guess all that can be recouped. These people in Cairo are down to their last dime. These are really desperately poor people. And I don't know how much that factors into it. Ultimately, the question, I guess, is who's got the most to lose? Cairo had the most to lose. That's what the Corps decided, and it seems like a reasonable decision.
Jim, the Corps of Engineers has flooded thousands of acres of farmland in Missouri in an effort to save the community of Cairo. Was that a correct move on the part of the Corps?
Well, you feel terrible for the people on the Missouri side that the 100 households that are affected. I suspect that FEMA will be in there just as soon as they can, as soon as the water goes down, trying to help those people out, some of which will have flood insurance, probably many of which will not. But is it easier to affect 200 or 250 or 300 people displaced, or 2,800, as Pat said, in the Cairo side? Plus, is it cheaper to reclaim farmland in the long run than it is trying to rebuild infrastructure? You're going to have burst sewer lines. You're going to have possibly gas mains rupturing. There are all kinds of infrastructure that would have to be replaced if you allow it any worse into the city limits of Cairo. There was some low-lying flooding anyway. There were some homes that had to be evacuated already. I don't know how you do it without affecting one side or the other. This kind of harkens back to the discussion we had about 5 years ago when they wanted to raise the levee on the Missouri side of the river out in the Chesterfield Valley area, and they wanted to raise a levee over there while the brain trusts that were behind that kept saying, but that won't affect the water level on the Illinois side. Well, this proves right here that lowering a levee on the Missouri side absolutely affects the water on the Illinois side. The same thing would have happened in that Chesterfield Valley area. They raised the levee, I think it was 13 inches or so, if I remember correctly. That is going to raise the water level on the Illinois side. As Pat put it so well, mankind has decided where we have decided where we want the rivers to go for our convenience, and every once in a while, Mother Nature says, no, you're not as smart as I am, and what was the butter commercial, Mother Nature knows best, or something or other.
Nice to fool. but
Yeah, it's not nice to fool Mother Nature. Every once in a while, Mother Nature is going to show us that you can build a man-made structure, but she can go over the top of it if she chooses to.
Is this a procedure we should start following in the future? Is cutting a hole into a levee to flood some farmland in an effort to protect communities? If you
Oh,
think back
this
to,
is not unprecedented. This has been done in other places. I don't know that it's been done in recent memory in our area. I was in Ohio during the '93 flood. I know there were natural breaches that changed water levels in other places. I'm not aware during the flood of '93 that there were any purposely done.
There was one. There was
Okay.
one. And that was after the flood of Almeyer. When the water is coming down inland on the inside of the Mississippi River levee. The fear was that the impact of that water arriving at a lateral levee in Prairie du Rocher would break the levee and take the town of Prairie du Rocher. And the solution was for the Corps to blow out part of the Mississippi River levee above Prairie du Rocher, deliberately flood an area that included homes, and create a cushion so that the power of the water coming from the north wouldn't be so great. They did exactly that. It worked, I'm happy to say, because I was the reporter covering Prairie du Rocher, so I had a vested interest in whether we flooded. There were people in life jackets. It was kind of a scary place to be. The one difference in that was, and it was controversial because they flooded homes, the homes were inevitably going to flood. There was no question. It was just whether the water coming from the north inside the levee was going to get them, or the water rushing in from the river got them sooner. So it was unlike Missouri in that respect.
But it's not uncommon for the Corps of Engineers to try to control water levels. This is done behind dams all the time. And sometimes there are areas that are flooded and I hate to use to save the greater good, but it becomes weighing the options, and you have to sacrifice one area to save the larger area.
In any piece of river, you're almost certain to have levees of not exactly the same height on both sides, or the same age, or the same quality. What happens if we spend $500 million in Metro East to replace the levees and get the system up to snuff, and then a big flood comes along and the Corps of Engineers says, you know what, we're getting too much flooding in Missouri, we have to blow a hole in your new levee and flood your bottomland. There's a precedent at work here that needs to be thought through a little bit, I guess, about what you might do the next time when you're talking about the relative value of land on one side or the other and how you intervene.
we need to take a break. We'll have more Metro Talk right after this.
Hi, I'm Audrey Lucchese, and I'm from Alton, Illinois. I love music, and that's why I came to Lewis & Clark. It's been an amazing experience here at Lewis & Clark, working with students that are so talented, coming from all over the area, and they work so hard to follow their dreams. The music faculty at Lewis & Clark they're fantastic, and they're there every step of the way to push you to follow your dreams. One of the unique opportunities that I have had at Lewis & Clark is being able to record my own music with a fellow student here. Being able to record our music has opened doors for us in the music industry. My long-term goal is to finish here at Lewis & Clark and then to transfer to a four-year school and finish my degree in music performance. I would recommend Lewis & Clark to another student because it is definitely a great place to get started, and it can open so many doors for you.
Big dreams and good grades aren't enough to get into college. There are actual steps you need to take. Finding someone who can help is the first and most important. For the next steps, go to knowhowtogo.org.
Watching Metro Talk, I'm Kent Scheffel, Pat Gowan, and Jim Schrader here. Jim, the St. Clair County Republican Women's Club, we'll get that out.
So you can't even say that in Madison County. You can't use that word.
I'm not used to saying that word in Madison County.
It wouldn't be a lot easier if you were in St. Clair County, actually.
They've stopped a bake sale that they had planned because they're saying that with the state's new campaign laws, if I'm going to sell you a cookie or a brownie now, you're going to have to fill out a form. They're saying that's not worth it for a bake sale. Have we gone too far with the new campaign laws if we have to fill out paperwork that blocks a bake sale?
Well, somehow I suspect that the St. Clair County Republican women may be overstating the problem just a tad. I think what the campaign laws are supposed to control is you buying a brownie for $50,000, wink, wink, and make sure you know who I bought the brownie from, and I've got a contract coming up soon, remember. I don't think they're as concerned about you buying a plate of brownies for $5 at a bake sale. But if that is the consequence here, there is the law of unintended consequences sometimes. Maybe that's the way it ought to be. If we're going to get up in arms about campaigns, financing and campaign reform, then there ought to be a track of every dollar back. Should it go down to the $5 plate of brownies? I don't know, but does the $5 plate of brownies sometimes grow into the $50,000 plate of brownies? Then we may have a problem. I suspect if they wanted a way around this, they could just make little strips of paper and it says, I bought a brownie for $5, and you sign Ken Scheffel and you let it go. So I think that there's probably some trying to draw attention to this and maybe a little silent protest here. But we needed campaign reform. I'm not sure we got as far as we needed to get with the latest round, but you can't have it both ways.
Pat, has campaign reform gone too far if we can't hold a bake sale without having to fill out paperwork?
Like Jim, I'm not sure they're right. I did a little research, and the time I had available, I couldn't find anything that narrowed it down quite to that level.
I thought it was $500.
I'm just not sure.
All right.
I can't quite tell. But having said that, it would be very simple. If I were the little tip for the Republican women of St. Clair County, they canceled the bake sale for this year's county fair because they're concerned about this. I would find a sponsor. One form, Ken Scheffel Ford, put up a sign, these brownies are free. Compliments of Ken Scheffel, one to a customer, they're free. Ken Scheffel Ford fills out the form, one time, one form. Give the darn things away and everybody will be happy. I mean, that might be a way to get around it, but so much of our lawmaking is either bought and paid for or at least is subject to people who are trying to buy and pay for it, that we've got to regulate something somewhere because we can't tell where some of our laws are coming from. Sometimes when laws are passed that don't make any sense, doesn't mean they don't make sense to the people who put in the contributions to get them passed. That's a reality of the system we have. We've got to police it somehow.
Jim, Secretary of State Jesse White wants to sell some new license plates in Illinois. He wants to include the Cardinals logo on the plates. He's already selling plates that include the Chicago Blackhawks, the Chicago Cubs, and now some of the Chicago lawmakers are saying, wait a minute, why are you selling plates that include a Cardinal logo? Should Jesse White be selling those plates?
I don't care one way or the other. I really don't. Obviously, the people in Chicago have a problem with it because we all know Cardinal red jerseys and socks or Cub blue jerseys don't exactly mix in Chicago. My question on all of these logoed license plates with the Blackhawks, with the Cubs, with the Cardinals, with whomever, those trademarks are owned and controlled by Major League Baseball, the National Hockey League, National Football League, whatever the sport is. Are we really raising additional funds if we have to pay licensing fees to all of those organizations for the use of their logo? And for those who think that you don't have to pay a licensing fee, you're missing the point. because those people are deathly in control of those logos.
They agreed to give up the logos as long as all the money went to education.
And we all know how that works because that's how we got riverboat gambling, because all of the money was going to go to education, wink, wink. I don't know what's wrong with, you have a license plate and that's what it is, and you don't have all of these decorations. I would like to see truly a full audit of what these additional license fees really raise versus the cost of production of those licensing, or those different licenses. I suspect that they are not quite the lucrative business that they may be cracked up to be. If you want to be a alumni from Lewis and Clark Community College, should there be a license plate for that? Or SIU, because there is one for University of Illinois? I don't know, but if there's additional production costs, that should be factored into what they're selling the plates for.
Pat, is it a problem if we have a Cardinals license plate? Some Chicago lawmakers are okay as long as it's the Cubs, the Blackhawks, the White Sox, but they're having a problem with the Cardinals plate.
If I remember right, Secretary of State's office required people proposing the plates to be able to show that there were enough sales behind it. So I think they do reject some that don't seem like they would pay enough money to have it struck, but supposedly the extra fee covers the cost of the plate. Presuming we're not losing money, that we're gaining money, come on, Chicago, get a life. These people don't realize there's anything in Illinois below Interstate 80 anyway. Who the heck cares? I don't care if they have Carolina Tar Heels license plates from Illinois. If somebody's willing to spend enough money to put a few bucks in education for it, why in the heck not? This is a Southern Illinois thing. These are the home teams for the people in Southern Illinois. We pay taxes in Illinois too. This is just silly.
I can suggest that bumper stickers are cheaper. And just kind of stick it right above your license plate and we're close.
We need to take a break. We'll have more Metro Talk in a moment.
Be sure to order your Metro Talk license plate.
Yes.
Hello and welcome to the Lewis and Clark Minute. Today we're going to check out the radio broadcasting program in WLCA with Mike Lemons.
Have you ever listened to your favorite radio station or your favorite disc jockey and say, I could do that? Or maybe you're the type of person who says, I could never do something like that. Well, with the help of first-year Mass Comm student John, we're going to show you just how easy it is. Each voice intro starts with talking about the band that just played, and we add a station identifier. Next, you want to offer some information that may be of interest to your audience. And finally, tell the listeners what the next song is, who sings it, followed by another station identifier. John will do one live now.
Silver Sun Pickup substitution on WLCA. The Big Pink released their debut album called A Brief History of Love. This single is off that album. It's The Big Pink with Dominoes. It's on College Radio's Best 89.9.
This has been your Lewis and Clark Minute.
What's that? I don't know. Something I kind of made. Ooh, what's it do?
What do I do? Well, thanks for asking. I ring my bell and I like to dance. What do I do? Well, thanks for asking.
Ow! Yeah, it still needs a little work.
Anything's possible. Keep thinking. Get started on your own inventions or just play some games at inventnow.org.
Sounds like you could use some Van Gogurt. It's fortified with arch-rich nutrients to improve your math and reading skills. Catch!
Van Gogurt, thanks. So what's the deal with your ear?
Always with the ear, huh?
Feed your kids the arts. For 10 simple ways to learn how, visit AmericansForTheArts.org.
This is Metro Talk. I'm Kent Scheffel. Pat Gowan and Jim Schrader are alongside. Pat, Governor Quinn is considering withholding state money from local municipalities. He says he needs to have more borrowing power to pay off state debts, and this is his way of trying to get the legislature to go along with that plan. Is it right for him to potentially withhold money to the communities in an effort to get that borrowing power?
Do I correctly recall? I think this was originally a Republican proposal out of the legislature, and then he raised it, increased the amount, embraced it, and said, "Yeah, unless you let me do a debt consolidation loan on the state's money," which he's been fussing about now for a period of months. Unless you let me do that, then we're going to stiff the municipalities for a while. Well, this comes at a time when the state is shoving everything downhill that it can. The municipalities are taking on more burdens. Certainly the school districts are taking on more burdens for the money that's not being paid. So it seems reprehensible to me as an actual tactic, but it might be something that could help as a political trick, might be able to help Quinn get what he wants in terms of that bill consolidation alone. The state's finances are now so convoluted that even people who are seriously trying to understand what's going on don't understand it. I've come to wonder whether anybody does, or whether anybody really has a holistic grasp on how all the pieces fit together anymore. We've raised the income tax, but it's almost like that never happened. You know, it just went by us. So I've said before that as an outsider looking at it, the bill consolidation thing doesn't seem like such a bad deal to me. People do that with credit card debt quite often. You put it all on a lower interest card, you save money, you pay it off. That's kind of what he's talking about doing. The real problem in Springfield, more than lack of money, is lack of trust. And maybe that's happening all over America. The partisanship has taken such an ugly turn. It's more important for me as a Democrat or me as a Republican to oppose what you say or do as the other side than it is to get something done. And I lament that, because I think it's a lot of our problem in Springfield.
It's the jockeying for position. As Pat just said, it was an additional, originally a Republican idea. Okay? Because the governor says, oh, that's a pretty good idea. You know, I'll twist it and turn it just a little bit so it becomes my idea. And now all of a sudden it's a bad idea. If, you know, the leaders in the Democratic Party had come up with it, the Republicans are going to be against it. If now you got a leader in the Democratic Party using their idea, and it's a bad idea. It's come down to what Pat just said. Whatever it is that you're for, I'm against, regardless of what it is. To me, the consolidation makes absolute sense. We are accruing interest on roughly $8 billion in unpaid bills. That was the number released by Judy Barr Topeka last week. We're accruing interest on $8 billion, when in theory we could borrow $8 billion, make one interest rate instead of paying Discover and Visa and MasterCard and Sears and JCPenney, put them all under one, pay one interest rate, make all of those vendors whole for the first time in 4 years, probably 4 years, at least 4 years, make those small providers whole, and then pay one interest rate. In part, how that works, however, is to control or get in control your spending on the other side, so you don't just continue to run that credit card back up just because you've got that one loaded. You don't go apply for another one because they sent you an application in the mail, which is kind of what's happened here. On the surface, it seems like, well, little Pat's going to take his baseball and go home if he doesn't get his way. But on this particular one, if that's the only way he's going to get anybody's attention, if that's the only way he's going to move something forward, then maybe the means justify the end here.
This is like parents fighting using the children as collateral damage. You know, it's like taking hostages to get what you want. There's got to be a better way to reach consensus.
Pat, a court has ruled against a group of 37 hospitals in St. Louis. They were seeking $455 million from 6 tobacco companies to help cover the cost of smoking-related diseases that they had treated patients for. The court said, nope, can't have that money. Is that correct on the court's part?
Well, it's not my place to say whether a jury's correct or not, but my analysis of it would be that I think what tobacco did was reprehensible and misleading people about the health effects of tobacco. But the Surgeon General has told people since 1964 this is killing you. This lawsuit had to do with bills that were accrued since 1993 by health institutions treating smokers' diseases of people who weren't insured and did not otherwise pay their bills. And there were a lot of them, and it cost a lot of money. They were asking almost $500 million in damages plus punitive damages. The defense essentially was that it wasn't that big a part of your bills, and it was a legal product, and the government said it was okay to sell these, so how is this our fault? I am swayed a bit by the slippery slope of that level of product liability. what happens when the hospitals get together and sue McDonald's for treating the uninsured coronary disease of everybody who ate at McDonald's and then later had a heart attack and showed up at the hospital uninsured? I mean, as ridiculous as that sounds, that is sort of on the line of what we're talking about here. And I don't think in a free society that works very well. It would be more compelling to me if you could argue that somebody gave you something that they promoted as being safe and it wasn't, and they knew it wasn't. Then I think you've got a great case. And in fact, that's pretty much what the attorneys general did with the big tobacco settlement of 13 years ago, 1998, I think it was. But these kinds of cases are fraught with peril. Tobacco does not win them all, from what experts tell us, but they win most of them. And it's a crapshoot you take when you try to sue them. And the outcome was, I don't think, a great surprise to anyone.
I would be a little more understanding if you're talking about people that contracted cancer prior to 1964, and the Surgeon General has determined that smoking is hazardous to your health, labeled on every pack of cigarettes manufactured in the United States. Since then, I mean, what part of this is bad for you, don't you understand? But even if you look back prior to 1964, you know, cigarettes were the last nail in the coffin. Cancer sticks, smoke that cigarette until you puff yourself to death. I mean, it's not been any particular surprise to anyone that cigarette smoking is bad for your health. To try to put together a case since 1993 is exactly as bad as talking about at what point in time does personal responsibility take over? Let's go after Dunkin' Donuts and Krispy Kremes because of, see, I got your attention. Now I'm stepping on your toes, right? Yeah, you can sue those cigarette people, but leave my donuts alone. And see, that's exactly what we're talking about. Now we're going to reduce trans fats mandated in schools and restaurants, but so far there hasn't been a successful lawsuit against the fast food manufacturers or the cake manufacturers or Twinkies or Hostess or anybody else.
You know, just thinking this through, if you had a taxation system for a national health care program, and I'm not trying to get on a soapbox for this, but if you did that, depending upon how you finance the whole thing, maybe you put a surcharge on the makers of things that create greater health risks. Maybe there is a surcharge on people who use trans fats, or people who put sugar over a certain amount into a recipe, or people who make cigarettes, or people who sell alcohol with the idea that they create a greater risk, so they pay a little more into it. The consumers of those products would pay a little more into the healthcare system. That would be a way to spread it out.
They want to do that for a soft drink tax, but the additional money is going to education.
That's going to do it for this edition of Metro Talk. Thanks for being with us. Pat Gowan, one of the editors with the Post-Dispatch, has been here, along with Jim Schrader from the Telegraph. I'm Kent Scheffel. We'll see you next week.